Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we've got the final day of the National Hunt season tomorrow at Sandown, and that's where I'm going to be focusing my attentions mainly. There is also one race at Ripon that I'm interested in tomorrow. There's a couple actually. I'll be also watching Ross Collin. He's not one of my selections for tomorrow, but I just want to see how he gets on. I think he could run a big race if they were trying, but I just wonder whether they might be looking at towards the back end of the season again with him, getting a couple of runs, getting him dropped in the handicap, turning up at like Goodwood again and being very well handicapped. So let's start with the first race at Sandown, the Bet365 Novices Championship Final. And the horse that I quite like here is one that I think is overpriced tomorrow, and that one would be Fireflyer. Fireflyer for Paul Nicholls and Harry Cobden. Obviously, both of them still trying to win titles. Paul Nicholls trying to win the trainer's title. He'll need this and a couple of other good winners to get him involved. But Harry Cobden is also probably just wanting to cement his title. He'd love a winner on the final day as well, I'm sure, to really wrap up the season in good style. Now, why do I like Fireflyer? So he's got some decent form. His second to Brecon Castle in a bumper at Cheltenham at the beginning of the season. Brecon Castle, that was the fastest furlong at Cheltenham all season. So Fireflyer ran a really good race there to finish second. Then went to a novice hurdle, and again it looked disappointing at the time, being well beaten by Gidley Park, but Gidley Park is actually quite a good horse, isn't he? Last seen finishing 6th in a Grade 1 at Cheltenham, having also won, Grade 2 I think at Cheltenham before. So Gidley Park, that was, Firefly being well beaten, nothing wrong with that. Then came out and won a couple of races himself, winning at Wincanton and Taunton, and last time out, disappointed in a similar race. So disappointed in a National Hunt Novices Handicap Final at Sandown on the 9th of March. You're like, well, why would you be picking a horse back here at Sandown over the same course and distance, or actually slightly shorter, sorry. Why would you be picking Fireflyer for this race? Well, he went off 11-2 last time in a very similar race. And the trainer or the trainer's representative came back in and said just hated the going. It'd been officially described as heavy, soft in places. It was riding really tacky that day, and I think that was the reason he disappointed. He's back on better going, and yet considering he went off 11-2 last time for a similar race, tomorrow you can get, just load up the race, whoops. Tomorrow, for a horse that was 11-2 last time for a similar race, you can get 12-1. He's back on the better going now. He's dropped in trip, so they can ride him a lot more positively and really be confident that he's going to stay further. They can go from the front here, and back on that better going. He got dropped a pound for disappointing at Sandown, over 2.5. I think there's plenty to like about him, to be honest, tomorrow, and I think he can run a really big race at 12s. I think he's too big. He was 11-2 for a very similar race, and there was clear reasons why he disappointed. The ground is completely different tomorrow. If he bounces back to his previous form, he should go close. And we could even say that he is overpriced purely looking at 2 runs ago. 2 runs ago at Taunton, he won a novice hurdle off level weights, beating Secret Squirrel. Off level weights. Tomorrow, they will both run off a mark of 126. And yet Secret Squirrel is down here at 7s and 8s. Fireflyer is 12s. Well, technically, on that, they should be identical, or Fireflyer just very slightly a shorter price. So if you're gonna go 8s about Secret Squirrel, you should go 15-2 about Fireflyer. But you're not. The odds haven't been reflected like that. Firefly is a bigger price than Secret Squirrel, and yet I think he should be the same price. So I'm quite happy to see the money for Secret Squirrel, because that's suggesting that they really think Secret Squirrel is going to go close, and if he does, Firefly should also go very close. So that's my first selection of the day. It's at Sandown. It's Firefly, sorry, at 12-1. Moving on to the Oaky Chase, which is not a handicap. Now, the punditry or the analysis from people that write columns is atrocious. Alex Hammond this week has said, Garlaw will be much better in this Oaky Chase. Now he's back into handicap company. This isn't handicap. This isn't a handicap. What is she going on about? The quality of the analysis and columns being written by people that have got into the racing media is atrocious now. So often I very quickly look at them. I look at them mainly to see why a horse may be backed. Not because I want to know what their analysis is. It's because who have they tipped up? Because they're pundits on TV and on the Sporting Life or Racing Post. Who have they tipped up? Because people just follow them blindly. So I want to know why there might be some money for a certain horse. And sometimes I completely disregard that and go, well, I'm not worried that there's a load of money for that horse. It doesn't matter. Whereas if nobody's really tipped it up, and yet it's still being really well supported, that then catches my eye. Why is it being really well supported? So anyway, going back to the Oaky Chase and the horse that I like in this. So I've had a look at this. I think there's so many question marks about so many of these. But the one I'm going to plump for is Hitman. Very, very frustrating horse. Hasn't won since winning a graduation chase in 2022, November 2022, when he beat Earn River by 11 lengths on soft ground over 2 mile 5. Now, I think the trip is one of the big things for him, and the ground. Has he had, when was the last time he had 2.5 mile on good or good to soft going? Well, it was actually back in October 2022 when he finished second, beaten ahead by Riders on the Storm. To be fair to Riders on the Storm, that was a very good... Yeah, it was in the old roan chase. Riders on the Storm was a very good horse. He beat Garlaw, giving Garlaw £17 that day. Well, he gets £4 tomorrow from Garlaw, so I can't see Garlaw beating Hitman. On the at this track, on the ground, over 2.5 mile... I think he's going to go really close. Probably the closest he's had to those sort of conditions was when he was third in the Ryanair back in March of 2023. Not beaten far by Envoy LN and Shishkin. I mean, that's, proper Grade 1 form. Is there are there any proper Grade 1 horses in this race against him? No, it is a Grade 2. I understand that. And I think that's why he's coming up a relatively short price, because I think he is just short of Grade 1 class, or he could be Grade 1 class on good ground over this sort of trip. So what price can we get about Hitman? We can currently get 5 to 2. There's a couple of outliers. Bet365 and William Hill go for 3s and 11 to 4, but the easier odds to get is 5 to 2. I think Hitman, I think he'll go off favourite tomorrow. He'll definitely travel well. It's whether he picks up. I think he will. I think he will run a really nice race here on the ground. We don't want any rain for him. Doesn't want any rain whatsoever. If it doesn't rain, I think he goes... I think he takes all the beating here, to be honest. This is his ground. And yeah, I'd be very, very hopeful of a massive run here from Hitman. Moving on to the 3 o'clock. Celebration Chase. We've got the battle. We've got John Bond versus El Fabiolo at the moment. Which one's going to come out tomorrow due to the ground going too fast or whatever? For me, I think El Fabiolo is still miles clear of John Bond. And I think those two are miles clear of the rest. I think El Fabiolo will win this by about 4 or 5 lengths. John Bond will be potentially 5, 6, 7, 8 lengths clear of Edward Stone, who'll be running on through beaten horses. Editor de Gite, who tried to go forward. Boot Hill's just not good enough. Nube Negre isn't good enough. Elixir de Nuts isn't good enough. Yeah, I think El Fabiolo wins this. I won't be having a bet on El Fabiolo at those prices. Unless he drifts out to like even money sort of thing. Then I think El Fabiolo could be a bet. So kind of, I'd love everybody to tip up John Bond so that El Fabiolo can drift out to a backable price. Moving on to the Bet365 Gold Cup, the feature race of the day, possibly. Some people might say it's John Bond versus El Fabiolo. And there are 4 in this race that I'm interested in. I'm thinking, are the reserves, have they just been ruled out? I think they have. One of those was definitely had a chance. That was Your Own Story, although he his campaigning hasn't quite gone to plan this season. Hence, he's ended up being reserve 22. I don't think he gets in. The 4 that catch my eye in this race that I'm interested in are Am I Right, Enrillo, Lemilos, and Kitty's Light. Now, let's go through all 4 and I'll tell you who my 2 selections are going to be. Am I Right? There is a race in Am I Right, for sure. It could be this. His 5th last time out when staying on over 3 mile 1. Really good effort. I think he wants this sort of trip. We did back him in the Irish National last year. He went off 11-2 favourite for that and pulled up. Obviously, the winner of that race, I Am Maximus, has come out and won a Grand National. So it was definitely a good race. It was just disappointing how poor Am I Right travelled over that longer trip. Now, I still think there's a race in him, but we're almost going on one good run this season when staying on 5th behind Meeting of the Waters. I just wonder whether he's not very reliable, or he could just throw in a bit, have a bit of a paddy and not run his race. And he's also been well backed. The fact he's now been well backed, we've definitely missed the price about Am I Right, so I won't be getting involved on Am I Right. Second horse is Enrillo, who, do you know what? He is unbelievably well handicapped now. He's down to 134. I made a tweet about him before when he was beaten. I think it was when he was beaten at Musselburgh. No, it wasn't. It was when he was beaten at Taunton over 3.5 mile. Off 134. Comes back to Sandown where he's gone well before. Did he win this a couple of years ago and then lost it in the Stewards' Room? That was off a mark of 143. He is completing his races, and he is definitely interesting. The problem is, last time out was a very similar-ish race, as in terms of it was the same trip, 3.5 mile. He was running off 134. Angus Chalada rode, and he wasn't good enough. Maybe things, the injuries, the pulled up efforts, the falls, the disappointing runs for quite a little while have just caught up with him, and maybe he's just not as good. Angus Chalada rides. I think surely if Harry felt he was unbelievably well handicapped, Harry would have jumped on him even over 3 under 3.5, who looks in good form. So Enrillo is not going to be one of my selections because of that. I just think maybe he's not good enough anymore. One horse that I definitely think is good enough is Kitty's Light. And I know he's the favourite, but as soon as he got beat in the Grand National, I kind of said that he's got to be aimed at all of those types of races, just not the Grand National. He got beat in the Grand National in essentially a Grade 1 race. All 4 of those in front of him were Grade 1 winners over fences. That's what he got beat by. Graded horses. So then we look here, is there a graded horse in this race? I personally don't think there is a graded horse in this race. And off 145, so a pound lower than when he actually ran at Aintree. And on ground, he definitely wants the good ground. And at a track that he's ran so well at before. He won this last year. Third in it the year before behind Hewick and Musical Slave. And the year before that, I think he should have been given the race when he was awarded second. So it's a race that he definitely likes. He was second off 139. He was third off 145, and he won it last year off 140. He's only running off 145. He's not running off 150, 155 sort of thing and going, well, it's going to be tough to win off a higher mark. He's only running off 145. I fully expect him to take all the beating here, to be honest. So my number 1 in this race is definitely Kitty's Light. The second horse that I think will run a big race, and they definitely, obviously, they want him to run a big race, is Lemilos. Now, we had Lemilos this season at the Cheltenham Festival in the Pertemps final. He was also in our little multiple that unfortunately we only managed to get the 1 winner, which was very frustrating. Loda Sud, if he'd won the county, would have made that a very good bet, even with just the 2 out of the 3. But anyway, Lemilos is a former Coral Gold Cup, I think it was called at the time, winner off a mark of 146. Now he can run here off 149. So having won a Hennessy, I'm going to call it the Hennessy, what is a top quality feature handicap, He can run here off just a £3 higher mark. For me, that is not enough to stop him running another big race. Last season, after winning that, they went to Kelso, where it was just a prep run for the Grand National, and then he ran well in the Grand National off 152, but didn't get home. This season, they dropped him back to hurdles. They thought we'd try and win some races off lower marks over hurdles. It didn't quite work. Although he ended up being very well handicapped, it didn't quite work over hurdles, but they're going back over fences. He does also have a win to his name over at Sandown, and beating Dacia Arbor off 139. He's only off 149. I certainly think that Lamilos is going to go close. And again, Dan Skelton probably, he probably looked through all of his horses here. Who do I have that could go and win me that 95,000 in the Bet365 Gold Cup? Who's my best chance here? Of all the runners I could enter to try and win that trainer's title, and he's gone with Lamilos, and I can totally see why. So they are going to be my two for tomorrow. Kitty's Light, who you can currently get at 9-2, lots of 9-2s around, and Lamilos, who you can get at 8-1. I think both of those have plenty to like about them. Both will appreciate the track, the trip, the going. Yeah, everything's in both of theirs favour. I do really like Kitty's Light still. I still think that horse is a 150 horse. Probably not quite good enough to win a Grand National, but is certainly good enough to win another one of these, or next season if it doesn't work tomorrow, go back for like the Scottish National sort of thing. Kitty's Light will definitely still be competitive up to a mark of like 150, 155, I think. Whereas, and Lamilos, he is well handicapped based on his runs in like the Hennessy. I think he's still got more to come for Dan Skelton. Moving on to the 4:10 at Sandown, the race featuring Impere Pass versus Langadan again. Now, Impere Pass beat Bob Ollinger, Langadan back in third at Aintree. Now, that could come back to bite them a little bit, especially as this will be Langadan's third run in a little while, and he's the one I'm actually going to take out first. Langadan, I'm taking him out because he's won at Cheltenham. He ran really well at Aintree. They're clearly trying to get some prize money here, but I don't think he's going to be good enough to have 3 runs really quickly against proper Grade 1 horses, I think. Now, Impere Pass was good, beating Bob Ollinger and Langadan. But for me, I actually think Bob Ollinger should have been awarded the race. I think he was the best horse on the day as well, Bob Ollinger. Impere Pass bumped into Langadan, and Langadan and went across Bob Ollinger at a crucial time. I understand why Paul Townend has chosen Impere Pass. He could still be very, very good. On that day at Aintree, I said I thought there was a really good 2.5 miler in Bob Ollinger. I felt he was the best 2.5 miler around. I think Sir Gerhard is one of those right up there as well. Sir Gerhard doesn't stay 3 mile and probably isn't quick enough for 2 mile anymore in against moderate horses. Put him over 2.5 and his form is actually very, very good. I'm actually just having a look on my other screen. It's 2.5 mile form. So he went to Cheltenham and he won the Ballymore, beating 3 Stripe Life by 3.5 lengths. Very good, over 2.5. Next run over 2.5, he was second in a Grade 1, the Gold Cup Chase, the Willie O'Warm Gold Cup Chase at Fairyhouse, beaten half a length by Flame Bearer. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get to see any more of Flame Bearer after he won that, but he had come from winning a race at Thurles, a Grade 3, by 13 lengths, and looked very progressive, this Flame Bearer. Looked like he could certainly be a top-class Grade 1 horse. Sir Gerhard, next time he ran over 2.5, just about, it was 2 miles 3 and 15 yards. He beat the Get Devil's Coachman by 2 3/4 lengths. They were clear of Ashdale Bob and Aspire Tower. So again, he won, and that's it. Then they went up to 3 mile for the stayers. He doesn't stay 3 mile. Then they dropped him back to 2 mile for a silly little hurdle that he won. He went off 1 to 5 that day, and he won it comfortably. 2.5 mile is this horse's optimum. I really like this horse over 2.5 mile. If I think if Willie hadn't entered in Pere Pass, Sir Gerhard would be favourite. I know that sounds weird, considering Sir Gerhard's like 4th favourite, but I think they're going, well, they think, the connections think, Impere Pass is Willie Mullen's best one. Langadan is Dan Skelton's best one. That must be good form. And because Patrick's on Sir Gerhard and not Paul, they're going, well, maybe he's just like to get some extra prize money. I really think Sir Gerhard... I'd be surprised if Sir Gerhard doesn't beat Ballyadam. I think Ballyadam's just a very, very good handicapper. I'd be surprised if he doesn't beat all of the rest behind him. And I think he'll beat Langadan. It's whether he can beat Impere Pass, who, it was a very good performance, but he's got to give £6 to Sir Gerhard. Langadan's got to give £4 to Sir Gerhard. For me, I think there's not a lot between them off levels, and yet because he's getting £6, I think Sir Gerhard is the bet in this race at 9-1. I do like Sir Gerhard here. Patrick's probably going to be waiting out the back, and he just needs to get his timing right. He can sometimes get it a little bit wrong, but if he does get his timing right, I think he will go very, very close on him. Moving on to the 4:45, the 2.5 mile Josh Gifford's Novice Handicap Chase. This we used to be at the Cheltenham Festival. No, it didn't. This has always been here. 2.5 mile Novice Chase. Where do I think this is going to go? I think it's going to go to the graded horse in the race. And the graded horse in the race is giving away weight to everything else. It's Nickelback. Yes, he's the favourite. I think he'll win. Again, another horse that really wants this 2.5 mile trip. 2.5 mile this season. He beat Can Do Kid off 125 by 24 lengths. He beat History Bear off 135 by 19 lengths. He then got beat by Hermes Hélène at Newbury in the John Frankham Grade 2. That is really good form. Hermes Hélène was going to be top class Grade 1 horse. Would have been running in all of the right races next season. Unfortunately, he lost his life last time he ran at Sandown. Then Nickelback got beat over 2 mile by Master Chewy. Now, in hindsight, that form doesn't look too bad. Master Chewy was going to run a decent race in the Arkle, probably finishing 3rd or 4th at the Cheltenham Festival, before then running 2nd at Aintree behind Founder 50. So nothing wrong with getting beat by Master Chewy at Kempton. Then went to Sandown, stepped back up in trip and beat Jello comfortably, and was going to beat Hermes Hélène as well, when unfortunately Hermes Hélène fell and lost his life. But Nickelback already had him beat. He dropped back in trip at Aintree, found everything happening where he didn't jump off at the right time for a start, ended up being mid division. He likes to go forward. I think he'll go forward tomorrow, and he'll just show that these are handicappers behind him, and he's actually a graded horse in the race, and be able to run these. I think he could be 10 lengths clear coming to the second last sort of thing. He might be paddling towards the end, but yeah, I think James just needs to let him go here, let him go forward, let him run, and if you jump all the fences, I think he will take all of the beating. And he is currently... Let's just refresh this page. I'm hoping I'm not going to get kicked out soon. 11-4. You can get 11-4 about Nickelback. Moving on, I think we go to Ripon next. We do go to Ripon for a race. It is a Class 3 handicap over 1 mile. And there's a horse that I like here. I think they've got a decent horse here. And when I say they, it's the horse watchers with Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter, last time out, finished a very good 6th place in the Spring Mile, but he probably should have won it. Ali Rawlinson just kicked a bit too early, and he started to paddle late on. I think if he is weighted with a little bit better this time by Joanna in a smaller field, I think the big field he got very excited, kicked for home too early. This smaller field, he can ride. Joanna can ride him a lot more conservatively in terms of just sitting there and waiting. I think he could be very well handicapped, to be honest. Off a pound lower, he actually dropped to 73, which is very strange. And yeah, I think he takes all the beating here at Ripon. I don't know whether we've got any prices, so we will have to come back to that one for the prices. Let's just refresh that page. We don't have any prices, so we will have to come back for that to have another look. And moving on finally to the back to Sandown for the last race of the National Hunt season. And there's two in this that I like. The first one I highlighted earlier this week. I highlighted it a few times this season as well. And that horse is Arcoob, who is a massive price, to be honest. Bet365 have got it wrong at the moment. They will shorten that. We can't obviously quote those sort of prices, but we will say Arcoob is currently 18 to 1. I think that's a better price. 33s, if you can get 33s, I think that's a mental price about Arcoob. Why do I think it's a mental price about Arcoob? Well, the cheek pieces are on, which might just help him concentrate a little bit. But let's have a look at some of his form. He didn't actually run that badly when running off 120 at Cheltenham last time out. He only got beat 3 lengths. Yes, he was 8th, but he was only beaten 3 lengths. There's not a lot wrong with that, to be fair. He finished 2nd at Ascot behind Supreme Gift. Not a lot wrong with that. He was 5th at Doncaster when sent off the 5-2 favourite, I think he was, or might have been second favourite, over a trip that was too far and on soft ground. The run before that, off 120, when Alice Stevens took 5 off, finished 3rd in a feature handicap off a mark of 120. Nothing wrong with that. And the Sandown form also really catches my eye. Disappointed on heavy going. Doesn't want the heavy going. Definitely wants this better going. One on soft, beating Caleb by 3 and a bit lengths at Sandown. Had also finished 3rd last season, this time of year, in the first race on the card, behind Under Control and Iberico Lord. Now, Under Control has obviously gone and done well since, including finishing 2nd to Ashrow Diamond in a mare's hurdle, a grade 2. And Iberico Lord has come out and won a Greatwood hurdle and a Betfair hurdle. Disappointed then in the champion hurdle, but that was the champion hurdle, and it was a Nicky Henderson horse horses were running poorly. So Arcoob back to the same meeting as when finishing 3rd behind 2 subsequent very good horses. Arcoob takes on not very good horses. None of these are going to be running in graded races next season. None of these are going to be running in a champion hurdle or a Betfair hurdle or something like that. So Arcoob is very, very much overpriced. If you can get the 33s, I think that's huge. You get 16s, 18s, I still think that's too big, to be honest. And the second horse that I'm going to do in this race is one of our old favourites, who reverts to hurdles now after a disappointing season over fences, and that is Authorised Speed. For me, this is all about whether he gets the trip. If he does get the trip, this 2.5 mile trip, I think he's going to go very close off 134. I don't think that's his mark at all. Last season, ran some really nice races over hurdles, including winning at Sandown in December in a National Hunt novice hurdle. Then did disappoint in a Tolworth, but went off the 5-4 favourite that day. Came back and they reported that there was an issue with him. He did scope dirty, so you could kind of forgive that. But you've got to remember that was a grade 1, and he went off the 5-4 favourite. Then came out and won another race at Sandown, Novices hurdle, by 19 lengths. Before going to Aintree, stepping up in trip, going to Aintree for a grade 1, finishing behind... I mean, it was a grade 1, and it was a proper good grade 1, to be fair. Irish Point was the winner. Katira was second, won the handicap at Aintree recently. Hermes Hélène, as I said, I think is a proper grade 1 horse. Let's be clear about it. 2.5 miles over fences in a handicap will win a feature. Crambo was 7th. Crambo was reportedly on target. You know, people felt he was the best of the English for the Stayers Hurdle division this year. Even the horse who finished 9th, Blow Your Wad, he's come out and done all right since. Last seen, all right, disappointing at Aintree, but before that had won at Kempton, won a grade 2, when sent off the 13-8 favourite. So it's not like he won a grade 2 at 33s and it was a shock. He won it on merit. So that Turner's Mersey Novices hurdle last season at Aintree, I think was a very good 2.5 mile race. And Authorised Speed ran a really big race in that, travelled into it nicely, and just for me, didn't quite get home that day. They are still convinced he gets 2.5 mile. If he does, and he does get home, I think he's going to go close here. I really do. and you can get 11s about authorised speed. I mentioned about Arkub, and I said there are no graded horses in this race. If there is one, I think it's authorised speed. He's back to a course now that he likes. He's back over hurdles to get him some confidence back. I think he will be the one that, if there is going to be a horse that is a graded horse in the future, it's authorised speed. So they are my horses for tomorrow. They are my selections for tomorrow. Let's quickly run through them. Fireflyer at 12s. I think he should be a shorter price. He's got much better going to run on, which he wants. He went off 11-2 last time out for a similar race. Hitman to travel nicely. I hope he gets home tomorrow. There's so many question marks about so many of the others. Hitman does get his ground finally. El Fabiano, I think, beats John Bon. It's not a betting race for me, though. Kitty's Light, I think, is the still really well handicapped. Ran a huge race when 5th in the Grand National. Lemilos, back over fences now. Only a few pounds higher than when winning the Coral Gold Cup. Didn't quite stay the national trip. This isn't the national trip tomorrow. So Gerhard, I think he's a proper good 2.5 miler. I think he's the biggest danger to Impere Pass, and if that race does come too soon, that they had a real good tussle, Impere Pass, Langadan and Bob Ollinger, if that has left a mark on any of those, so Gerhard I think is the one to pick up the pieces. Nickelback to just go from the front, make all the running, and essentially play Catch Me If You Can, and I don't think they will. Arkub is overpriced. If runs his race like he did last season on the final day of the season, would go really, really close here. An authorised speed, I think, is a graded horse. Could be a graded horse running in a handicap. Didn't go to plan over fences, back over hurdles. Wouldn't surprise me if he bounced back. And finally, we're going to keep an eye out for the odds of Helter Skelter, who, in a smaller field, Joanna Mason can be a little bit more patient than last time, or than Ali Rawlinson was, and I think he will take all of the beating there.